What's happening, Soul Fam? So we are going to be channeling two very specific and powerful angels today. They're going to be the angel um, ASBEEL and SAMSHIEL. So one is the angel of ruin, the other one is the angel of the eclipse. So just in case, I just want to see if everyone on YouTube can hear me clearly. Can you hear me? Just put it in the chat box real quick just so I know. Perfect. Nice. All right. If you're on Patreon, you were able to post the questions that you wanted to have answered. If you're not part of Patreon, the link is in the description below. You are more than welcome to join all of us in this beautiful journey of, growing together and learning alchemy and all this other cool stuff that we do on there. Finding your soul purpose, like mastering energy work, manifestation, and more. Don't forget to follow us on TikTok and on Instagram because there's also really good stuff that happens there all the time. And if you're new to channeling and experiencing the power of channeling, I just want you to be open because this is an energy experience. Okay. So, like, when we channel, it's not just me receiving the messages, it is all of us kind of like participating. So you can receive your own messages as I open the gateway. So I basically like just answer the most immediate questions. I might be speaking to you at certain points where it feels like it's very directed towards you and you alone. But at the end of the day, what I'm really doing is I'm speaking to every energy that has aligned themselves with this message. The other thing about that is, like, when you allow yourself to be participant of the energy that we're channeling right now, you're going to hear me say specific things, or you'll hear me talking. And then all of a sudden it's like my voice gets muted or it gets thrown in the background and you get taken somewhere else. That's now the beings that we're channeling directly having a communication with you, directly talking to you. So it's really important that you try to at least think about maybe having pen and paper close by. If you're on a computer, you just have your keyboard very accessible with a text note thing open, because you might get something that's really juicy and you don't want to forget it later. One of the things that I've learned during this type of work is, like, sometimes you get a message and you're like, oh, I won't forget it. I want to stay in the zone. And when you get out of the zone, it's completely gone. And you're like, man, I should have wrote it down when I had the opportunity, right? So that's why you want to be safe than sorry, okay? These are really high energies that we're working with. They're cosmic energies. They're energies that are based off of creation, right? So they're like creational laws that we're really communicating with. Samshiel is, like I said, the angel of eclipse, and it's also a solar deity or solar like vibration that has to do with your spirit and ascension. Asbeel is more so destruction energy. If you know a lot about tarot, he's associated to the tower in tarot, the major arcana, which is breaking down foundations and questioning like authority in general. A lot of people think that Abzeel is one of the five Satans because he directly went against like the traditional story of God. But really, Abzeel had a really great example as to why he took the direction he wanted to take. He questioned, why did God want to destroy everything instead of just correcting the most immediate problem? So if man had a lot of negativity and disobedience and self-service to themselves, instead of destroying all of humanity, why not just fix that one characteristic inside of them so that they continue to thrive? That one question alone kind of made him look like a bad guy because he wasn't going to the beat of, the sovereign power at the time. Now, regardless if you're like really aligned to the concept of God, or you just embrace all forms of like, the ultimate source, the all as source, the universe, God, gods, yourself, whatever it is that resonates with you, I'm just telling you the backstory as to the mythology to these particular beings. Take what serves you, leave what doesn't. And If at any moment you feel uncomfortable, remember it is the alchemist way to be able to sit down in these vibrations, even if you don't agree with something, because at the current perspective that you own and you have, you can't see the full extent of a specific answer or a specific, like orchestration of events, like a blueprint. Just because right now you may not be able to see it, being in its present, giving it the opportunity to speak, and just being open to hearing what's about to be said, right, is the alchemy itself allowing you to later be able to see this in your reality, rather through personal experiences or, your own personal channelings, your own connections with whatever you consider source to be. So let's take a deep breath. And I've been channeling ASBEEL for a while, especially because, like this past week, I think for me, a while is like infinity, I guess. But this past week, I've been really channeling ASBEEL because we're walking through like not only the eclipse energy, but we're walking through Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde forces us to kind of like choose what really works for us and what doesn't, and also communicate what we need. As well as bringing us forward to our goals, right? So Mercury has a lot of wisdom associated to it because it's associated to Thoth, is also associated to Hermes, and it's associated to like the cosmic body of Mercury, which, depending on its elementals, can be ice. And ice is not something that's always a bad thing. We need ice sometimes. In alchemy, the element of ice is usually perceived as like a limitation. Something's been frozen, something's been stuck there. But sometimes being in flow is not necessary. So we need to be able to freeze things, even if it's temporary, right? Because being able to use the power of Jevra, which is another of the Sephiroth and Kleloth, the anti Sephiroth, basically. I totally lost my train of thought. So anyway, we're gonna go deep into it because now I'm starting to channel. I can feel the waves opening up. I was just waiting for somebody to just like give me the confirmation. Let's do this. Whatever I was going to tell you, though, was going to be juicy. It was going to be great, but I won't be able to hold on to it. I want to start off with Marcella's question on Patreon, which is, what steps need to be taken to perceive the beauty in our ruin? Then that's for ASBEEL. I have been open to experiencing death in one of my identities, so I'm experiencing the state of the ship between you and it. I want to understand how I experience this energy with love and gratitude despite how I am feeling at the moment. Thank you. Okay, so what steps need to be taken to perceive the beauty in our ruin? Okay, she's been having many identity deaths. This is for ASBEEL. Everyone take a deep breath. Do 2 more of those. Release any tension in your body. Let go of any anticipation, like, oh my God, I hope I hear it. I hope I end up getting something out of this. Just be present. ASBEEL, what are the steps needed to perceive beauty in our ruin? What are the steps needed to perceive beauty in our ruin? Your ruin is only as distasteful as your ego. Remember that ruin is only a state of being. One is in perpetual ruin, though one's perception of ruin has been taken away of the idea and construction of chaos towards ruin. Ruin is necessary in the beauty of life, for if nothing were to be ruined or dismantled, destroyed, all things would become stagnant, boring, and unelusive. Understanding ruin as beauty is one of the most powerful mantras that the goddess Isfet can give any one specific being. From chaos comes beauty, from chaos comes peace. Ruin in ourselves allows us to see old aspects of ourselves that no longer are. Whether or not we notice that these particular vibrations inside of us meant something to us, the factor of ruin and the lack of that ruin creates allows the ability to be appreciative of the shift that has happened. I would like you to elaborate. Okay, so he showed me like a diagram, and I was like, okay, what he was trying to say was pretty difficult. Let's say like you've had a loved one, right? Like your mom, for instance, and when your mom was around, like you didn't prioritize your mom, even though you guys had a great relationship. You didn't prioritize your mom, and you always like focused on work and other goals and stuff like that because you thought that there was going to be so much time, right? You never even thought about your mom being outside of your reality, which most people don't even think about. The moment that your mom is absent because the transitioning process of the cosmos from life to death ends up happening, you end up seeing an instantaneous ruin of an old identity of yourself that took that for granted. And that is also a vibration that comes through and lets you appreciate the time you actually had. Through the state of ruin comes the ability to say there came beauty from it. Now that you are able to be even more appreciative of something that is no longer attainable to you, or what seems not to be attainable to you. Ruin itself doesn't always seem like it's positive, is another thing that he ended up showing me. But it is a vibration that allows you to see what beauty is, because without ruin, you would take beauty for granted. And without ruin, you don't know what you're working towards or what you want to create, what you want to experience, because there is no polarity and there is no duality. Ruin itself is essential in the lower dimensions because and really in all dimensions, but they hit the lower dimensions most intimately because of the fact that they're so crucial to the development of new ideas and new infinities. There comes a point where ruin is not necessary, and ruin is just a perpetual state that isn't even perceived anymore. It's just like kind of in the air, but you don't see the air really, right? So it's just in front of you but not there, and it doesn't affect you unless you choose to interact with it directly. At the highest level of consciousness, ruin just becomes another tool which you become appreciative of, because ruin we also see, and he's showing me this, he's showing me another example. Ruin we also see when we no longer want to be in a relationship with another person, whatever form that relationship may take. And we're recognizing that, like, okay, to find the beauty in life, I need to separate from this person because I'm no longer in attachment with that beauty. Ruin is the scariest moment because when you enact ruin, it becomes this vibration of precision. So like you want to be very precise with the ruin, and it's almost like this anxiety and this stress that you need to make sure that the ruin goes in the right direction. When ruin happens to you because you choose not to empower yourself with ruin, that's when a different level of like self-sabotage and anxiety will kick in, because you end up seeing this vibration of, why is this happening to me? Like, how do I get out of this? The fear, the uncertainty. Ruin itself is never an uncertainty unless you choose to always hold it in your hand. Ruin will always happen on a cosmic scale, and ruin can never be avoided within the lower dimensions and the dimensions that need it so integrally. But ruin is even one of the vibrations that still exists in the akasha, and many people don't contemplate that there are portions of the akasha that are inaccessible to everyone, or they don't exist anymore because reality has shifted so far off. The akasha is still attainable should you choose to change yourself. And that sounds like a riddle sometimes, but as you meditate with it, you'll understand. um He's saying that that's pretty much all he has to describe for this particular question when it comes to ruin, but he would like me to take it to Samshiel to answer this question as well. So Samshiel, what steps are needed to perceive beauty in our ruin? As ASBEEL has stated, it should be considered a value of appreciation, of acceptance, and the understanding of finality. Infinity only continues to exist through our observation and acknowledgement. The moment any of the examples take place that ASBEEL has commented on, there is an instantaneous parallel that must be considered for the mastered. The ability to state that ruin will also eclipse, that ruin will also negate, destroy, and leave behind. The power of eclipse and ruin is simply the non-observance of a particular vibration in one's reality. All things must come, all things must follow. When one understands that ruin and the blinding power of eclipse are the same thing, they are perpetual states of movement. They never allow themselves to be out of sight, only out of perception. The beauty of ruin comes when one sees the power of ruin, the value of ruin. With no emotions attached. No other answers can truly be explained for this at your current dimensional understanding. This is a meditative process that we can elaborate should you choose to encounter us in the astral. The human condition will try to contemplate ruin at all costs from an emotional value. When the power of ruin goes so much more to the reaches of infinity beyond emotion itself, we find it difficult to communicate the true extent of ruin when your only vehicle is understanding it through emotion. We must contemplate this in the astral should you choose to abandon emotion. That is all for now. That is all for this question. No, I get it. It's cool. A lot of what they were trying to explain was like, they wanted to show me something more extensive, but then it was like, you can't explain that without emotion being involved. And like, what we're trying to explain doesn't even have emotion. So you can't explain this idea to beings that are still stuck in thinking with their emotions. And it's like, they were really trying though. Like, Samshiel was really trying to bring that energy in. Okay, so let's see the next question on Patreon. This is from Rain. We often learn from other beings in higher dimensions, and at this time, gods and goddesses are incarnated in human form, having to overcome human limitations and the challenges of emotions. What have these angels learned from us about their own specific power and how they would apply if they were in human form? Okay. So the angels in another dimension, what have they learned from us that have reincarnated in physical form. Samshiel is going to answer this one first. We understand a lot of your reality and your conditions. We just don't understand the entanglement in which you decide to continuously obey. The entanglement is what confuses a lot of the angels at a higher dimension. We understand the abilities of cause and effect, polarity, rhythm, and all the other concepts you've come to understand during your time understanding the concept of alchemy. We just don't simply understand why the amnesia has taken such effect upon our brothers and sisters as we watch from the ethers. The amnesia seems like a silly limitation to us because the amnesia doesn't exist anywhere else other than the third dimension. How can beings that have had access to all the anti-amnesia simply succumb to amnesia when stepping deeper into these vibrations? We could understand these vibrations by replaying stories from other gods and goddesses that have come into the realization of the human realms. The problem is, each one of those beings always experiences something so new, so uniquely different from the previous. So in a way, we have a slight addiction as to understanding the infinity of all the possibilities that could play out through the amnesia effect at a lower dimension. Many of us have no interest to incarnate as deities or earthly vibrations, not because we do not care, but simply it is just not our interest. We like to analyze and watch and experience through the ethers and not the material universe. And though the average mind may comprehend this as a preference over positive and negative, it simply is. Our vibrations are also too strong to sometimes fully embody in one avatar. The fragmentation to us seems silly, and to others, they may comprehend that as fear. What we learned from watching the gods and the goddesses reemerge on the planet is the unity of their character, the synchronicity of them always operating in alignment with one another without fully being able to coordinate through the material universe. The endlessness of who they are, knowing who they are, re-embodying who they are in a new format every time they reincarnate. We do experience some sort of equivalence that seems like sadness to you for our brothers and sisters that we know to be so powerful. For they do forget how powerful they are. And even though you watch this experience over and over, it's still shocking every time. And the word shocking, again, is only something we can use to best elaborate a sensation that is closest to your understanding. We do not feel sadness or shock exactly as you are comprehending it. In fact, it has no emotion attached to it. It simply is a state of being. Very much so enjoyable, but non-comprehensible. We don't necessarily require anything from the lower dimensions. not even this experience, but it is the equivalent of what seems to be entertainment in the lower dimensions. It is just perpetually there. And you may see the material universe of incarnation as just another faction of the Akasha, another portion of the library. Not everyone spends an extensive amount of time in a particular section of a library, such as fiction. Most people, most beings will switch from category to category. The earthly material universes being one of the categories amongst the Akasha. For the Akasha cannot truly be limited to only the third dimensional space. And that's what we learn the most. We return to the material universe and we see the echo of this portion of the library interact with another portion of the library. And amongst the many copies of the same literature, each literature having a slight variation from each other. We simply just observe and learning through that observation, watching infinity play out over and over and over again. For even in the higher dimensions, there is no such thing as the future or fate or destiny or the past. Everything is instantaneous. We seem to understand the concepts of things like fortune telling through watching you experience the illusion of space and time and the unknown and the use of fortune devices. That comprehension is not needed where we are. That illusion does not exist where we are. For that's what it is. It is simply just an illusion. A power that none of us really want to mess around with, but we want to keep it close enough to understand it. We do give profound valor and respect to those that step into the lower dimensions of matter. For the difficulties that do manifest themselves through forgetting the power of nature within each one of the gods, goddesses, angels, beings, starseeds that emerge. And the illusion of humanity itself, contemplating the many different races, the many different locations, the many different identities, forgetting that they all came from a complex, multidimensional external system. The illusion of humanity itself is the most interesting illusion of all. For yes, angels and demons, the Egyptian gods and the Hindu goddesses, we all seem to have a difference. But we're all the same in the simplicity of the fact that we are consciousnesses that have chosen to emerge and continue our infinities as a personal objective of who we are. For our understanding, even in the third dimension, is only an aspect of our ego. What you understand as Samshiel is only a version of my ego. It is not the entirety of who I am. Hence, humans falling into an illusion of destroying their third dimensional ego is such a great illusion. They don't understand that the constructs they've created in philosophy and understanding helps them understand primordial vibrations of the cosmos. But once you've understood, you must understand that your limitations still come from the ego of the great conscious mind that is humanity. And all you can see is the egos of the beings that you've come to understand and interact with. You have not truly come to understand the multidimensional version, the true source of any one particular being. That being Thoth, that being myself, that being ASBEEL. You only know ASBEEL and Thoth, not the power that manifests itself universally across the infinities of the parallels of infinity as Thoth. And some may contemplate and say, oh, is that not source? In a way it is, but in a way it still isn't. What are the limitations of the mind that each one of you still hasn't understood about the unlimited power that truly exists in front of you? What is it? That is the question, and that is what we continue to watch. This conundrum of watching some of you emerge in this dimension, knowing that you're capable of something, feeling the raw power coursing through you, and even having manifestations apply themselves to validate your power, and still you question the natural nature of what is flowing through you and what is most obvious, the nature that you have always been, the nature you will continue to be, the nature that you currently are. For your nature is only embodied in the physical form, but it's still much so affecting every other dimension, every other creature, and every other law of infinity. Just because you have become incarnate in the physical does not mean that you've stopped existing and manipulating the realities from the infinities. That is a simplistic answer to this question. That is all for now. You may ask the next question. Okay. Yeah, I don't remember that one. I got like bits and pieces of that one. But I felt like it was dope. I'm gonna play this later. Let's see what else we got in here. Yelene. How does one harmonize with the energies of these two angels? What are we to learn from them? ASBEEL says that like he pretty much feels like he answered that question already. And Samshiel is willing to answer the question in their own way. So Samshiel, how does one harmonize with the energy of both of you? What are we to learn from you? Samshiel. What's there to learn other than the power of silence? The power of the eclipse, the power of blinding. You can simply eclipse something with an overbearing light, or you can eclipse something in a similar style of your understanding of eclipsing, bringing a total sense of darkness that blinds. This is all that is necessary when coming into contact with me, is understanding the ability to silence and make unobservable any aspect of reality, rather through the shadow or through the light. The method is the same, the objective is the same. The impact may seem different, but that is only through the illusion of the illuminated infinity. Each infinity that takes place is based off of some vibration of light. Light is not the final dictating factor as to the infinities. For a shadow is the absence of light, and an overbearing, blinding light is the absence of being able to witness light, for it blinds you simply. This is very similar to the power of the blinding light of God. Now, why would one blind others from seeing an ultimate truth? That simply comes down to the ethics of each individual. Those ethics may be wrong to the eyes of some and complete to the eyes of others. What is the point of fighting? What is the point of putting your energy in anything that you do not wish to acknowledge anymore? Simply put a blinder on it, and this is not to ignore it in the sense of shoving it into the subconscious mind. It is simply knowing that as a creator, one has the ability to simply omit versions of reality from ever interacting with oneself. An example is in the higher dimensions. Should you choose solitude, you omit the opportunity of any other being being able to reach you, find you, and contact you. You stay in complete solitude until the objective of uneclipsing yourself from the many is enacted, allowing others to reintegrate themselves into your reality. The power of the eclipse works on so many different levels. It comes down to whether or not you choose to use it in one vibration over the other. Darkness will naturally cause any ego, shadow, inner child. The power of the shadowed eclipse to make them feel terror and despair. The overblinding light will still enact a commanded respect. I repeat, a commanded respect that still inspires fear and submission. To not use the power of the eclipse is to simply complicate the existence of reality. Many beings will not fall into place of using this energy simply because they feel uncomfortable owning such strength. And for those beings, they will find themselves constantly constantly vibrating through the pendulum of rhythm, experiencing a limitation that they always had to overcome. For the pendulum can be halted and kept only in one place that is most beneficial. And the mathematics of the pendulum are only considered the mathematics of the pendulum based off of the material universe and how we understand that material universe to interact with said pendulum. The mathematics of pendulums at higher dimensions are waves, they're frequencies. They do not go back and forth, they sway between each other. They may seem to hit the same endpoints of linear lines going back and forth, but they have so much more fluidity to be able to create designs and patterns that a linear line structure that most pendulums will follow cannot. Allow yourselves to understand the energies of the platonic solids. Allow yourself to understand the vibrations of curvature. For when you do these things and you change what you choose to observe, you can understand the infinity patterns in all alchemy. ASBEEL still continues to have nothing to say. That is all for now for this question. Okay, so I mean, I feel like that was kind of self-explanatory, but if not, I will recap the diagrams that I ended up seeing, which, like how does one harmonize with the energies of these two angels? It's like thinking, I wouldn't even say like it's thinking outside of the box. It's seeing sideways from the box and understanding that the box doesn't exist, and that the box does exist, and that you need to think outside of the box. You need to be able to think inside of the box. You need to understand the power of like basically a tesseract, which is continuously like expanding upon itself as a box that is never truly limited to the power of a box. It's a very powerful vibration of thinking contradictions, because the power of the eclipse is the opposite of what seems to be nature, but the eclipse is very much so a power of nature. So when you work with Samshiel, particularly, it's going to show you what needs to be left behind, what needs to be destroyed. Um, and almost like how can you reorient reality so that you don't pay attention to specific things anymore, or specific things don't play out in your reality anymore. A lot of destructive quality, but without destruction in play. It's more so radiance or absence will create a condition, and it's similar to destruction and creation, but really it's like pause and play, if you were to think about it that way. Like if you don't want to watch something, change the channel, right? Or like turn off the TV or pause the show. Like that'll give you the opportunity to create an alternative, right? um hmm, they kind of like said like, so another question here is like, what overall messages do they have for humanity right now? I kind of hear like the same answer. Like we've given you a generalized understanding as to what to be looking for right now. I hear the words death, transformation, and non-acceptance of the powers that are no longer to be. They're showing me a lot of like destruction, like a lot of eclipsing. So like you destroy something and then you eclipse that portion of your reality to move forward, especially because they're most strongest right now during the Mercury retrograde. It's giving us the ability to say, like, I don't want to be this person anymore. Nothing's making me be this person other than myself. Am I willing to do the opposite of what I am wanting to create to actually get what I want? And the best way to describe that is like, um, something I learned most recently. Like, for instance, if you want to be like a very successful person, are you willing to be not unsuccessful? If you want to be a really rich person, are you willing to be poor? Your willingness to be poor is going to be the same willingness that's going to attain you the power to become rich. It's the opposite contradiction of what the pendulum will be in flow of, because usually when the flow of a pendulum is happening, you end up seeing like how you have moments of wealth and then moments of like severe contraction. And then when you're in the severe contraction, you're like, I gotta pick up my rituals again. I gotta do this, I gotta do that. So I can fall back into the forms of wealth. And that's one way of manipulating the pendulum if you're using the divine masculine and you're using lines going back and forth. And like the way that it tends to create itself, because I know pendulums end up going through like curvatures, right? But those curvatures on a higher dimension are still considered lines, like straight lines, and it's still a divine masculine program because you're witnessing it through matter. When you hit a higher dimensional peak, the pendulum has to go like almost like an up and down pattern before it hits either point, and there it creates like a sine wave in between each point. The sine wave can change depending on like what the rhythm of that pendulum is actually targeting. um, when you kind of like really start understanding the power of the eclipse energy and saying you're going to completely focus on specific things, letting other things die, not even seeing them as a death, but really just understanding that you can't put your attention there anymore, that's a form of destruction. And like that actually seems to be a little bit easier in terms of evolution and growth for some people, because some people have a hard time directly destroying something. If you have a problem destroying something, or even ignoring something, which is what it's bringing, like the power of right now through this channeling, like it's more so like being able to ignore something essentially. If you have a problem with either one of those powers, and those powers are basically going to be very limiting to you, you won't be able to master creation and reformulation, because you're not willing to choose the antithesis of it all. It's a very powerful vibration when you kind of like give yourself into that. And you also have to think about this, like if you're somebody who's going towards wealth, for instance, and you have to look at the opposite. How willing are you to be poor? Have you been poorer than the current situation that you've been in this now moment? If you have been poorer, and you have things that are not going to put you back in that particular space, and you have like safety nets because you've developed yourself as a person, you need to bring the power of ruin into like saying, okay, I'm going to stop feeding in this fear that I'm going to go back to that day where I was homeless. And you also need to bring the power of eclipse to say, I'm no longer going to even leave that be my like new base zero. You know what I mean? Like I'm so far away from that because I've developed my consciousness to say that my new like set point is me just, maybe losing a couple $1,000s, you know what I mean? But it's not going to be as bad because I can move forward from my new state of zero. You need to be able to use your consciousness and change like the focal point of the light to be able to create truly what it is that you want in your reality. So that one's for Tazhijan. Mm. So the next question is by Katerina, and it's about the V word, which I'm not going to bring up. Like how can it be neutralized, and how is it going to affect us once we ascend to new earth? In Germany, many people have taken the V word and have died afterwards all around the world. So I kind of feel like, I don't know how to explain this. The best answer I can give right now to that is I'm feeling a power of annoyance. Like, of course, that's not what they're feeling, but that's what it translates to here. Is like there's some fallacies in that question that they don't even acknowledge and they don't even want to touch up on. One of them being is like the way the question was stated, that what's going to happen once the ones who took the V word ascend to new earth. There is no ascension process in that design. Like we're not ascending upwards or shifting like completely new subsets of realities. Like the concept of new earth is already here. Is whether or not you're choosing to live that lifestyle. If you're choosing to live that lifestyle, you would have already realized that if you're in that dimensional reality, you're not doing the V word, or you are so in touch with your body that you decided to do the V word, right? Um, and that comes back, back to personal power. Really, that's like what you need to be considering, is what Samshiel is really bringing up here, is like, though the V word was a test of personal power, did you give your personal power away freely? Did you follow your intuition before you took an action with your power? Did you know that your power was so well structured inside of yourself that you could do the V word and your body was gonna not be altered, and your body was gonna like fight it off and be as in tune with itself as possible because you are an ascended being? Or were you so conscious of the fact of recognizing that there were other things in play with the V word that you are not going to react to it at all? You're not going to do anything unless your hand is absolutely forced. and you're also not going to give it your energy by contemplating on it anymore. What's happening right now in reality is a battle for energy. It's people say it's a battle for consciousness, but really it's a battle for energy. Like what side can gather the most amount of energy? What side can influence the globe with a specific kind of energy the most? And that's also like a give and take, because if there's a group of people, a group of negative alchemists that want to create chaos and fear and submission, everything in this dimension is based off of free will. So like it's the people who are being affected by the energies having to come to a conclusion as to how are they going to be the alchemists that they already inherently are to react to this. Are they going to react to it and see it as a tension, magnetizing it so then there's a war that has to be orchestrated to move past this? Or are they going to say like, this is nullified, this is not going to work for me, I'm not giving into that at all, it is what it is, I'm doing me, right? When you kind of create that barrier, you omit other aspects of reality. And like to the third dimensional mind, some people are going to say like, oh, that's spiritual bypassing, or like that's negative positivity, or whatever the fuck they want to call it. But it's not. That's just how the structure of reality works. There is a fine line as to like when you can't do that, right? Because you care about another person or something. But at this point right now in reality, everything that's going on is a battle of energy. Like where are you going to give your energy to? You know what I mean? A lot of people during the C word, the C period, right? The crown period, um, spent a lot of time at home watching Netflix and eating junk food and giving into fear. They spent their energy. Energy is a huge form of currency. So they gave that energy already to a specific outcome because they were not internally aware or determined to shift their own energy. Where other people were conscious of the fact, like, well, this is a great time to sign up for new courses, to, meditate a little bit more, to actually, do those things that I've been saying that I've been wanting to do for years, but I actually haven't got around to. Maybe switching my job, you know what I mean? Maybe taking this moment to actually recognize the patterns of other people. They chose to empower themselves with their own energy, even though chaos was happening. Chaos takes the form of whatever vibration it's closest to. And again, that comes down to the alchemist. So people who gave into chaos because it was easy to give into fear, they did that. They gave into that. They felt more of that. Like those are the people that now have the opportunity not to wear a covering, and they're still terrified to take it off because they've been conditioned now to be afraid of the world. And you have to think about that. There are some people who now are legitly afraid of the world. Those are people that are going to subconsciously want to naturally be home from now on. They're going to deprive themselves from being closer to society. And for some people, it's going to be this lesson to re-empower themselves if they get there in this lifetime. For other people, they have already empowered themselves and they're existing in their version of New Earth, along with all the other people that chose to empower themselves to be in New Earth. The other thing to that, too, is like New Earth does not require you to be fully conscious. Like, you don't have to be one of those people that is like me, that just understands a lot of alchemy, or is a healer, or none of that. Like, you can simply get to New Earth by following your intuition. And I know plenty of people who are not conscious in the terms of like the people who watch these feeds and these channel and our channel, you know what I mean? There's people who are not at that level, and they still ended up getting to New Earth because they followed their own internal power. And that's really what this now moment is about. It's not about neutralizing the vibration, because that's polarizing yourself. That's saying that the vibration itself has a negative tendency from the get-go. Maybe the creator of that particular V word doesn't have the best interest for humanity, but if you already come in with the narrative of questioning, should I do it? Should I not? Oh my God, if I do it, it's going to do this, it's going to do that. You've already given the alchemy of the V word that particular vibration unknowingly, versus you coming to a conclusion and saying, I'll do it if I absolutely have to. I'm going to go abroad in a couple months if I have to, and I have no other way to do it. fine. I guess like at that moment, I will do it just because I want to keep living my life. Or whatever other conclusion you come down to, that is your conclusion. It is your power. It's not because like anything else is actually forcing you to it. And even if you're one of those people that says, okay, I won't go abroad if that's one of the things that's being required from me. That's just still you choosing your power. And regardless in what direction you end up going with it, you're going to still be existing in a version of New Earth that is customized to you and is going to supply you with more blessings and more health and more opportunities because you're existing in a parallel reality. Right now, that's what the whole structure of reality is about, is learning the multiple parallels that are collapsed on top of each other that we're all sharing at the same time, and understanding that like there's going to come a point possibly that like a lot of the people that no longer exist are because they exist in another reality and we can't see them anymore, just like we don't exist on their reality. It's very possible that the whole sea global event that happened was to shift people out of our reality, so that because they were no longer resonating with the higher resonances that were happening. Some people perceive it in this dimension based off of their consciousness as death, like those people died. Maybe we died for those people on their dimension. And they're very much so still existing with us right now, super layered on top of our us, and we just can't see each other. Isn't that the structure of the afterlife? Isn't still that kind of sort of the structure of parallel realities and what we can channel in general as the understanding of our universes? Like it leaves a lot of room to like contemplate. So when it comes down to neutralization, it's about consciousness. Like what kind of consciousness are you empowering yourself to walk into that? And I've seen that personally as well with a lot of my clients. Like some of my clients will come in and they'll be like, you know, I'm afraid that this one procedure is going to leave me dead on the table. They're going to do like a open heart surgery. If that's what your energy is going to, you're going to manifest that. There's going to be a higher likelihood that that's going to happen. And I've seen a lot of people do that. And I've also seen people be like, okay, no, I know this is like, I have a 1 in 2 chance of completely surviving this, which is crazy. It's like a 50-50 shot, but I'm going to be okay. I'm going to come out of this 100%. And they do. They come out of it and they have usually ecstatic, like, supernatural events that happen to them while they were going through a certain kind of like procedure. It comes down to that right now. Like, and you also have to understand, like, are you taking care of your body? Like, a lot of these things are consciousnesses. If you come down to think about like the V word or the C word itself, like they're consciousnesses that have been created by someone else has put it into play. And once you realize, okay, well, how am I going to intake that consciousness? How am I going to operate with that consciousness? What does that consciousness mean to me? How much weight does that consciousness have on the world? Is that like weight of the world impacting me as an individual? When you kind of like look at all these different aspects as to the creation of what you're going to be interacting with, you're going to realize that you can manipulate reality much more easily than you ever would have perceived, because it's all in your mind anyway. I hope that kind of like answers your question. I'm gonna go to the next one. I had 2 more questions here. What would it change in their perception if they were human and they would meet these challenges and still harmonize fully with their powers? Or when receiving information or helping from them, what do they truthfully expect from us as an even energy exchange? Some people leave offerings to deities. However, I've read in multiple occult books that you do not have to give offerings or anything to angels. You just give them duty to carry it out. Okay, so actually both these questions are pretty decent. I'm channeling a little bit differently. They already started giving me the answer for the first question, which is like, what form of energy is needed to exchange with specific deities and stuff like that for help from them. And the first word that came up when I was reading that, which is respect and understanding. And like I kept seeing the word, the golden rule. You know what I mean? Like treat others the way you would like to be treated. Like really, these powers are just an energy or an extension of yourself. So you end up having to step into this power of recognizing that, like, how would I like to be treated? Obviously with respect and understanding. And you would want someone to actually listen to your advice when you give your advice, right? It's really that mirror effect of the law of attraction that comes down to exchanging with them. Now, the other thing that Asbeel is telling me as well is that when you have a specific offering or ritual that's come through with a specific being, like like you offer Chinnamasta fruit, for instance, after you do a specific ritual. That's because the collective of the people that have enacted that particular ritual over and over and over again have found a common use through that particular ritual. Perhaps giving Chinnamasta a fruit made things feel for the alchemist as an equal exchange. A lot of the material rituals are for the alchemists to feel like they're experiencing equal exchange with another being at another dimension. Is not always necessary, but if it empowers the process, it is a tool that can be very valuable. So that's the question for number one. And then the next question was, what would change in their perceptions if they were human, and how would they meet these challenges, um, and still harmonize fully their power? That one's been partially answered already, because they did go in depths with talking about like the gods and goddesses being incarnated. The part of the question that can still be answered is, um, eh, how can the beings essentially that are not the gods and goddesses that are now like essentially incarnated, how do they harmonize fully with their powers and meet their challenges? So Asbeel is the one that's going to answer this one. Everyone take a deep breath. The challenges of any being reincarnating their powers into this existence is the understanding of the human condition and the societal structures that create the ego. Part of the greatest achievement of any being with said abilities is to achieve a disassociation from the components of humanity and culture. That means to be able to completely allow oneself to exist outside of the structures of society and culture, so that one can be the antithesis of everything that does exist, therefore allowing themselves to truly see the power behind all the things that have been created. Understanding this notion is possibly the most difficult one, and this is why many people end up stepping into a vibration of isolation to achieve this power. People who go to nature, people that find caves and powers to become recluse and hermits, for disassociating yourself from everything other than the natures and the powers that be of the soul and the cosmos will allow you to fully understand the powers that are perpetually within and that are perpetually manifesting themselves existently through everything that you do and we do. Deep breath. Going against the grain is the most valuable tip that can be given to you, for that is simply ruin in its most rawest form. But also understanding to deny yourself of the things that you thought that you wanted is another form of doing the same thing. Denying yourself food when the craving comes. Denying yourself the impulse of having sex with a person you know does not serve you. is not about healing. I wouldn't like you to take in the vibration of healing. It's simply the orchestration of the opposite, which is simply creation, but to the condition of the mind seems like ruin and collapse. Seems like the tower, it seems like calamity, it seems like insanity, it seems like lost and loneliness. What is creation without ruin? What is beauty without ruin? What is life without ruin? What is gratitude if ruin did not exist? What is the gratitude of ruin and the mixture of all with ruin? The possibilities of ruin and destruction lie deep within the powers of each incarnate. Most initiates from the higher realms focus on only one aspect of their abilities. Should it be healing or education, empowerment, and disillusionment? How can one understand the full extent of one's powers without accepting the ruin in which one creates at every moment? You can't make everyone happy at all times. You can't be everywhere at all times. You cannot bend yourself for others at all times. Not all will bend themselves for you at all times. The finality is the ruin. The uncomfortability is the ruin. The discomfort that comes from even contemplating these ideas is ruin. And these are the powers that be. These are the truths to power that would unlock all powers. For the structures of society can no longer dictate what power truly is, nor can your ego, which was structured from society, decide what your power is. Take a deep breath. That is all for now. That is all for this question. Okay. Well, let's all express a deep level of gratitude to ASBEEL and SAMSHIEL. And if you wish for them to continue to communicate with you, set that intention now so they can do so through your dreams or through synchronicity. Hopefully, this broadcast was very powerful for you. Let me know on YouTube what resonated the most. Was this what you needed to hear? This what you needed to experience? And if you're on Zoom with me right now, let me know what your feedback is. Hopefully, hold on. Before you give me your feedback on Zoom, I'm going to disconnect my audio really fast because I want to just let your voice be heard if possible on YouTube as well. You don't have to say your name or nothing. We know who you are here in the circle. You can go whenever you're ready.
I wanted to say thank you so much. This was really, really powerful for me. Had a lot of information coming through, and also what was said was just really resonating with the truth and power. And I'm very grateful for this experience. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
I wanted to say that this was really, really powerful. Their answers were really profound, especially when we'll use the V word again, the V word and the C word. But when they spoke about giving your power away, or, everybody does create their own reality, and that is very true. There are many people who are concerned about the V word and their effects, and then there are many others who will not and have no intention on taking the V word because they believe that the C word is it's an energy. Everything is an energy, and if there's no match, or if you believe that your body is is not in alignment with the C word, then in my own personal opinion, then you probably won't get it. Or if you have gotten it already, it was never real to begin with. It was only to show you how to basically eradicate it. And I just felt like it was a very, very powerful answer. And even my own questions were very powerful. So I just want to say thank you to you, the channel, as well as both of the angels. I'm very grateful.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you guys. If you guys are seeing me make faces or whatever, I don't know if you guys can hear the noise that's going on right now, but there's like a ton of bikes that are literally blaring down the street behind me. So give me like 20 seconds to see if these people just like zen out. But it's been like 100 bikes already, and then also all like these sirens and stuff. Whew. That's why I was making faces. I was like, what is going on? Did somebody just die outside? Okay, now we're good. Now you guys can keep going. It seems like they went away. Thank you for sharing, Rain and Lila.
I found that it was absolutely powerful, but also it was almost like getting an open book guide again. It answered questions in a way that didn't just give a flat response. It provided the opportunity to ask more questions yourself and to sort of open up your mind to the potential. And it was really cool. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Alyssa said, I had a vivid dream that I flew with my dead friend, and at some point in space that was an archway to heaven. I wonder how that plays into what we were just channeling. But yeah, like maybe the layering of the dead. Eileen said, I needed to hear that. I heard that, and I needed to meditate on the shadows of creation. Yeah. Some people said that that really explained everything for our intuitive. Nice. Cool. So this replay is going to be online. We're going to put it on Patreon for a while, and then one day just unlock it again on YouTube. So if you were here live, you caught it. If you want the replay, it's going to be in the Gatekeeper section of Patreon. And yeah, I will catch you soon. Bye, everyone on YouTube. All right, and I will see